Saul, before he even encountered David, he was doing amazing things, right? Up until he went against what God had told him. So he was supposed to be fighting the Amalekites, and I want to say their king's name was Agag, and the Israelites essentially did everything they were supposed to do, but as opposed to killing all the animals, and not taking anything from the camp and such, they took the animals, and they took the king, prisoner, if you will. And Samuel came out and said, "Hey, why is it that you went against what God told you?" And Saul said, "Well, we did everything that God told us to. We killed all the people that we were supposed to, and the people, they took spoils. That's not what God told you to do." And as a result of that, he fell out of favor with God, right? But with David, you don't really see that up until maybe later. But he's humble enough to go about humbling himself in front of God, where with Saul, you don't see that.
Yep.
He blames the other people. And then he even becomes jealous of the person that is supposed to be taking the throne from him. So it talks about how, when Samuel was walking away from Saul, Saul reached out and grabbed Samuel and said, "Hey, do whatever it takes, to get me back in God's good graces." And he tore Samuel's robe. And Samuel says, "As you have torn my robe, Israel will be, divided in two, or your kingdom will be divided in two." And from then on, you just see the decline of the individual that Saul was, because Saul was seen as, this great person because he was the first king. And then just this decline up until he eventually tries to kill the person that was, supposed to be succeeding him. Yeah. So it's a very interesting thing.
So it's like this gradual, further away from who God called him to be and what.
Absolutely,
yeah, absolutely.
It's a good picture to look at. Example, what happens when you don't follow in God's footsteps? When you don't, when He called you to something and you know it and you don't do it. Yeah. Right? When you're disobedient. And worst of all is when you're arrogant and you're too prideful because of your insecurities to humble yourself before God and seek forgiveness.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter how many times you fall. What matters is that you get back up. Yeah, so that's another great quality of David, right, that you touched on, is responsibility.
Yeah, man.
Right? Because he didn't shy away from responsibility. He embraced it.
Absolutely.
He saw the problem. Goliath took care of it in God's name. He, he said, later in, as we read the book of Samuel, we see that Saul, because of his disobedience and pride, he now is being tormented by evil spirit, right? And he still continues this jealousy of David, and he persists in trying to kill David. Like David is the problem, when really he's the problem, And David, being true to God and true to his calling and true to the rules that God gave him, he doesn't fight back. He doesn't try and kill David. He doesn't retaliate. David doesn't try to kill Saul. He
flees.
He flees. Yeah. He still continues to serve Saul for a while, and then after he's advised by his best friend, the king's son, Jonathan. He flees. But yeah, so accept responsibility.
Yeah.
Don't flee from it.
Man, I think that's a key thing that you just touched on, right? Because throughout that entire time when, Saul becomes tormented by, this demon, and he goes and he hurls a spear at David with the sole intent of pinning him up against the wall and killing him. David, protected by God, is able to evade that spear, and then it happens again. And then, David takes off. For me, like if somebody tried to kill me once, I'm not trying to be in their presence.
No, thanks.
What I mean? But David was supposed to be loved by Saul. Post that battle where he had just got done chopping off the head of Goliath and delivering it to the king and said, essentially, this is yours. Take this back to the people to show that, you have done what God has called you to do. Saul is elated with David at that point. But then right after that, when the people start singing David's praises as opposed to singing Saul's praises, like, wait, what's going on here? This guy, he's starting to get famous, and he's only fought one battle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he sets out to kill David. He's like, you know what? I got something for him. The very
got
people.
something for you?
Yeah, man. You
Come
think
to
about
my chambers real quick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, post the battle, he tries to offer the oldest daughter. It's like, nah, who am I? I'm a lowly sheep herder. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. You know what? I'm going to send David off into battle against the Philistines, and he'll die on the battlefield. So essentially trying to set him up. The same way that we might end up encountering in our regular jobs. Always have that boss that is going to be looking out for your best interest because they're worried about you being a competitor. Because, you have a gift and they recognize it.
Yeah.
The same way so the same way that Saul saw that gift in David, the presence of God over David. It's like, no, I have to get rid of this dude, otherwise he's a threat to my kingdom. That's the same thing that we encounter, in our everyday lives. People don't like the fact that you live in a better neighborhood than them, and now it's like, no, something's got to be done. And you encounter all this friction along the way, and God is with you. And there's nothing that they can do to go about, pulling you down to where the people might want you.
Right.
And you see that with David and the fact that every battle that he fought with the Philistines, he was prosperous. And the people started singing even more praises for David.
Right. Wasn't there like a song where David has slain thousands?
Yeah,
and
that is.
Saul has only slain 50.
Yeah.
like that. And he's probably going on with the song like, He's like,
So
what?
wait a minute.
Let me see those lyrics real
That's
quick.
a very catchy tune.
That's a very catchy tune. I like the beat to that song.
Exactly.
I like the beat to that song. Let me get those lyrics though. I got some numbers mixed up.
Exactly. Man, but then you just see the jealousy of people that are at a higher level and such. Think about it. Saul was the king of Israel, right? David was still just a lowly sheep herder. Yes, he was, with God. God loved him. But Saul did not have that idea of David. This is the person that is potentially going to be taking my throne. I have to take him out now. Let me chop the legs off from underneath him before he gets too strong. Because if he gets too strong, I might not be able to defend myself.
And did Saul know what Samuel had done?
Oh, yeah.
He knew Samuel said David is going to be
I don't know if
not
he
king,
said,
but
I don't know if he knew that David was coming in.
I don't think so.
No,
But
I don't think so.
So Samuel did tell Saul that one of your neighbors is going to be taking your throne from you.
Oh.
Yeah, so maybe Saul didn't know
Paranoia
exactly
set
who.
in.
Yeah,
Okay.
And then he started seeing, it's like, wait a minute.
This kid. It's this
Yeah.
kid. This is the kid.
Yeah, exactly.
David was
Yeah.
walking out after playing the harp. He's like, "See you later, neighbor." He's like, what did he say?
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, exactly. But man, you just think about that. The jealousy that we end up encountering is the same kind of jealousy that David was encountering from the king, the person that had everything. And if he wanted anything more, he could have just took it. But he wanted the sheep herder's life,
Yep.
because people were singing his praises as opposed to the king's. Like, no, you guys are supposed to be singing about me. These are battles that I put David into, so not being able to recognize where God was able to come in or where God came in and, establish where David was supposed to be. He's only seeing what he's going to lose. And he's trying to protect it by all means, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think it was you, Angelo, that said this before, but if God wants you, the enemy also wants you, right? And the enemy wants you just as bad,
Yeah.
But he doesn't want you for good. He wants to destroy you, right? Because he knows that God has a purpose.
If you're a threat,
there you
know
go.
what I mean?
There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
let's take this strategic, tactical, right?
There you
If
go.
you're a threat, I'm gonna come after you.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a threat to my family, my kingdom, the things that I've built up, you're going to do whatever you can to eliminate that threat before it becomes a bigger threat, before it starts recruiting other threats. You
Your
know?
economy's starting to prosper. Oh, let's
Oh,
fix that.
gas
go
prices
fix
going
that
down.
real quick. Let's go fix that.
Mortgage rates are really low.
Let's go tear down that infrastructure
exactly.
real quick.
Right. So when you're at the top, you got a lot of people gnawing at your feet.
Exactly.
Gnawing at your feet. Second, third, fourth place. They're,
Yeah.
So at the end, if you're trying to knock the guy off the top, you get everybody else, gang them up together, and let's go take this dude down.
Yeah.
And they'll be united for that. What's it like? The enemy of my enemy is my friend,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's such an interesting thing as we study David, and to just I mean, look where we are right now. We're about an hour into this conversation, and we've only touched on that little story that everybody's familiar with, and the depth of that.
Yeah.
That we don't like. It's easy. Okay, he slayed the giant. He became king. Blah blah blah.
I
It's
think that's like 16 chapters, maybe.
Yeah.
yeah,
At most.
Yeah,
At
seriously. But there's so much when you really take time. You know, I actually tried to be better about this. I hated reading books in high school, college. I hated it.
Same.
Never read a book actually until after I became an adult, and now I love it. And there was a point where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try to read a lot of books because they say all the good business owners read like multiple books a year, 52 books a year, or like a book a week, right? I'm like, hey, cool. But I realized like, man, I'm just going through the book. I'm just reading. I'm not really retaining or learning or implementing. So now when I read, and this is my point, like when I want to read the Bible, I don't just read to get through it. I really try to read to understand. And I think that's where a lot of people are just like, oh, I read the Bible, but do you really get it? Because talking to you guys now, dissecting this story that I've grown up hearing over and over.
Wait,
And-
I've never heard that detail before.
We're reading the same chapter.
Yeah, yeah. You still read the Bible with pictures, right?
Thought that was the only Bible.
But yeah, exactly. But there's so many intricacies to David, and we talk about. 'Cause I think it's really interesting to see. Like, yeah, David's is this ideal man, a man after God's own heart. He's the second most mentioned person in the Bible outside of Jesus. But where are we today in terms of lacking that warrior spirit? Right? Because as we're releasing these episodes, it is the end of 2023. It's Christmas time. It is Thanksgiving when this releases, it'll be around Thanksgiving. And it's so easy to get caught up into Thanksgiving, then Christmas, then 2024, and then boom, boom, boom. It's like a really
New
quick
Year, New Me.
routine transition.
Yeah.
Right.
For the first
New
week.
Year, New Me. So it's like our goal with recording these David series is like, well, how can we make this tangible? How can we make it so clear that the listener, the viewer, the watcher, the receiver can have a blueprint to move forward into the new year? Not even just wait till 2024, but as soon as you hear this, what can you do now?
Do it now.
Do it now, right?
Absolutely.
So we're talking about the warrior. How do you guys feel about the warrior identity in today's social climate? Because personally, I'll start.
What warrior identity are we talking
There,
about?
there we go. There we go.
Extremely lacking.
Extremely, yeah, a huge lack of being a warrior, and
It started getting hot.
it was. Because I believe a warrior fights for things that are important. He fights, and I'm saying he because the warrior could also be a woman, but in this obviously specific context, he fights for something that's important to God. So aligning yourself with a cause, like us, what we're doing with this podcast, restoring manhood, rescuing kids, rebuilding families. 3 core values that we are all agreed that's like very important, and that these are real problems and challenges that need to be solved. That first piece though is restoring manhood, and part of being a man is being a warrior, which is totally not. Like, we are going the opposite direction of that right now.
That's
Absolutely.
toxic, what you just said. Toxic
Exactly.
masculinity.
Oh,
Exactly.
don't cancel me.
Yeah.
Don't cancel me now. Don't cancel me. But where do you guys think right now, like, where are we at in terms of having a warrior spirit?
In the world?
In the world, or just in general?
Well, I mean,
Like you said, it was kind of lacking.
non-existent. It's really
Why?
non-existent.
Like, what makes you think that?
Oh, well, because as we've said before, there's a war on masculinity that happened a couple years ago. And now traits that, used to be sought out for in a man is no longer a thing. Now, having a more feminized man is cool, being weaker is cool, in a man. Men that are, confident in themselves, men that don't mind, let's say you're a single man, you see a pretty lady, if you approach a woman, oh, you're this, you're that, if you have more traditional, what's it called? Jesus, what's the word? Your
Traditional values.
values. Thank you. My goodness. If you have traditional values, then you look frowned upon,
Yeah.
You're a bigot, and you need to get with the times,
Absolutely.
even though the times are going to hell in a handbasket, you know what I mean? And there's very little drive out there for the right thing. You know what I mean? There's a lot of, and I'm calling out men specifically. There's a lot of men out there that don't recognize evil in their face. They don't do their own critical thought process to try and see how would this be a problem in the future. And that's something that a warrior has to have. You have to have the foresight of battle. You know what I mean? And like you said, all these battles now, right, are in the mind. We're not in a state of war right now, as of now in this country. But we are at war in the mind. We are at war in the spirit, And
I'd argue like the war in the mind is actually more detrimental than the physical war.
well, that's where the war starts.
Right.
In the mind. Yeah,
Right,
that's the first war you have to win.
Because if you win the war of the mind, you can totally avoid the physical war.
Oh yeah, of course.
Man, so I'm not sure if you all are familiar with the show *Handmaid's Tale*, but essentially,
I've heard of it. I've never watched it.
it's not really my type of show. I watched a couple episodes, and
I ended up finishing all seasons.
No, it's like extreme on like masculinity and such. But this is post, the era that we're living right now, where essentially men end up standing up. It's like, no, women do not have rights anymore. I'm allowed to have, 3-4 wives, and your sole job is to take care of the house and have kids. Nothing else.
That's what the show's about?
Essentially.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. And legit, they will just lay there on the bed. Guy comes in, does his thing, goes out of the room, and that's it. Like, no interaction at all. Like, slaves, essentially. Guy comes in, does his thing, bounces. And that's just how it ends up turning. And that would be my greatest fear, in all honesty. That the fact that we're drifting so far away, that men end up saying, hey, we need to take this back. And, the old style that we had was, command and conquer, essentially.
Yeah.
Where we were going into foreign lands and, raping and pillaging women and children, such. And the potential for us to get back to that, just as a result of, not being able to feel the masculinity amongst ourselves. I think that we're pretty close to that, in all honesty. And it's worrisome for me, personally. But I have guns.
They were all lost in a boating accident.
Yeah.
Used to have guns.
Yeah.
Used to. There's somewhere in the ocean.
Yeah.
But that's such a great point. Because let's look at the warrior. Let's go back to that warrior, right? There's extremes to each side.
Oh, of course.
There's
Yeah.
when you're too warrior, that's exactly what you're saying. You become a tyrant. You become a tyrant. You're like, rape and pillage and just like,
You become cruel.
yes.
You become evil.
right.
You become the very thing you sought to fight against.
Exactly. And then on the flip side of what you're talking about, of they don't take initiative. They lack courage. They lack identity. They lack backbone. And I think it was like episode maybe 3 or 4 on the podcast where you were talking about that one, the sex offender that became like a principal at school. That's exact example.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah, we're the dads. We're the moms.
yeah.
Why aren't
exactly.
they boycotting the school? Where's the riots there? I
Right.
mean, where I would get
Where-
all of us banded together,
Where are
bash
the
down
warriors there? No
on the
warriors.
windows, pickets,
And
without violence, obviously. But I'm just saying, like,
right, and without guns because they're in the ocean. Of course. No, but that's it. Like we got to look at the duality of that, like the both extremes. Too much warrior, you become a tyrant. Too little warrior, you don't lead. You don't stand
Yeah.
for anything.
yeah, that's why you
Yeah.
have to have that balance.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah.
you have to have a standard. That's why you have to have morals.
Mm.
That and something that's greater than yourself, because you yourself, we are all corruptible.
Yeah.
We are. We're all
Absolutely.
corruptible in some which way or manner. For some people, it's women. Other people, it's money. Other people, it's fame or recognition. Whatever it is,
Man.
they make a little trophy. This little idol, and it means so much to people. I need to get that recognition. And everything that comes with it.
Exactly. The most worrisome part for me with both of those scenarios where you essentially lack the masculinity and then you have too much is the fact that when you get there, you're unable to recognize it. Because, you think about the kids of the modern
That's
day.
so true, yeah.
And you might be able to tell them, like, hey, you did this wrong. And they're sitting there with this look on their face like, I don't understand why that's wrong. Everybody's doing this.
Yeah.
And they're unable to recognize, what it is that you're telling them, and then you try to break it down for them as much as you can, Barney style. I don't get it. You're still wrong. Yeah, this is the way that we do things now. Either get with it or get lost type deal.
Yeah.
And they're unable to recognize it. And it's going to end up being the same thing for the individual that is hard on. It's like, I'm not giving up my rights because, all those guys, they gave up theirs. That's not going to be me and my family. And we're going to be living in those two extremes. And then when the two extremes clash, which one is going to end up winning? Of course, it's going to be the one that's going to be more violent. But is that actually a win that we want?
Absolutely not. Yeah. Yeah, because that's just going to lead to war.
Exactly.
More division, which we
Yeah.
really don't need.
Absolutely.
We all need to come together under one cause.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
The only thing I mean by that is Jesus. You know what I mean? We have the manuscripts, we have the manual for life, we have a way to conduct ourselves. We have great examples of what great warriors are and what bad warriors are.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And how one can lead a country to greatness and one can lead it down destruction.
Yeah.
Amen.
Absolutely.
And that's where we are in today's climate. Like there is a separation.
Yeah.
And it's just growing larger and larger. Where the middle class is the one that's kind of like being forced to pick the sides of like the middle class is disappearing because they're either going to the right or going to the left.
Yep.
And people who feel lost or they're not sure where to go or what's next, read the Bible.
Yeah.
Like read the Bible, because that, like we've mentioned in the past, like that has the instructions on how to do life. The problem is, one, people don't like to read, right? And two, people are afraid to read something that will conflict with their life today and their beliefs today.
Hello.
You're telling me that, wait,
wrong?
I can't be watching the pornographies.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I do like them girls.
I like that pornography.
I can't read the 5-cent flick.
I got to cancel my membership. I just got it.
There.
But that is part of the fear. The fear of change is not as painful as the fear of staying the same. So people would rather hold on to their doubts, their limiting beliefs, their lack, rather than risk pain of change.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
'Cause
Like we're giving them the answer.
Yeah.
Like
and it hurts. It hurts them.
Yeah.
Well, it hurts us, I should say.
Yeah.
Because sometimes somebody tell me the truth, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
you're
I
crazy.
can't accept that.
You're wrong.
You don't know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
I'm
You're
right
too
all
old.
the time. I'm
you
perfect.
do, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it goes both ways because it like you said, it doesn't align with what you want to do. It doesn't align.
And that's so painful.
Yeah, and then
That
it
is
also
so
hurts
painful.
because that means that you have to change. That means you're wrong. Something's wrong with you,
Yeah.
and that's something we all got to accept.
Exactly.
That's why, when it comes to sin, people can't accept that concept because they have morals, right?
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of amazing people out there that don't know Christ, that are atheists or whatever, and just have good morals. 2 points for them. Yay.
Yep.
Right? But the devil doesn't care about your morals. Your morals won't get you into heaven. Your acts won't get you into heaven. The only thing that gets you into heaven is to accept Jesus Christ, the Lord and Savior, the light, the only true way to the Father, right? And so what I'm getting at is that we need a standard. We need a standard so that we can all come together,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Man, I think another thing that we need to end up talking about on maybe another episode is how to go about recognizing, what's of God and what's not. Because
testing the spirits.
absolutely, but then, actually being able to recognize it, because the Bible says essentially that if it's contrary to what God would want for your life, then it's not of God, right? It's of the enemy. So if we know God to be love, peace, happiness, and such, and then something of the contrary starts, coming into your life, then you know that this isn't of God. That I'm battling with whatever. I need to go about getting back to the place where I need to be. But then I think that we need to consider also the character of Job, where Job was tested and maybe he didn't do anything wrong, and he was expressing to all these people, please believe me, I didn't do anything,
Sure
and,
you did.
Yeah, that's what
what
everybody
they
was
all
saying.
say.
That's
Yeah,
what they all say, Joe.
Yeah, exactly. You must have done something wrong, or somebody in your house did something wrong. You lost all your family, all your sheep, your house, you're homeless, you're living outside on the cardboard box. You did something wrong in your life. And, we have that same judgmental mentality that all those people have about, the people that are homeless in Chicago or, the panhandlers on the corner. You must have did something wrong. And that's why you're panhandling. So we carry that same judgmental mindset in the modern day life, even though we might not want to admit it. We do. I guess it's just naturally ingrained in us.
With the same measure that we judge, we will also be judged.
Exactly.
That's always what I think about when I feel that I'm judging or I see other people
And it's
judging
scary,
people
you know what I mean?
critically
When
and
you come
harshly.
to that realization.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
Yeah, exactly. How
Maybe I
did I
shouldn't
get
do
here?
that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Like, the way God's gonna judge me the way I'm judging other people.
Exactly.
I'm gonna.
know.
Come on. all right,
Yeah.
so-
I'm sorry, I'm sorry,
Exactly.
Jesus.
Yeah. So
maybe he just likes wearing dirty clothes and being outside.
exactly. Exactly. The man.
That's okay.
So I find myself having to talk to my wife about that kind of stuff all the time because she'll make a sly comment. It's like, that was very judgmental. Let's not go there. Let's dial it back a little bit. I do the same thing and just in a different manner. You know what I mean? Where I might not be judging the individual. I'm not judging Alfredo, for not having a zip up, as opposed to, the pullover hoodie. It's like, ugh. Disgusting. I'm not. I'm not judging him based on that.
Gross.
Don't look at my toes, dude. Don't look at my toes.
Yes.
Hey,
yes. Oh man. That's
Yeah, but those are the things that I end up falling to. You know what I mean? So being able to see, the log in somebody. Well, I'm sorry, the splinter in somebody else, but not recognizing the log in yourself. It's tough.
And I think that totally aligns with the dichotomy of a warrior and a lover, right? You have to be tough and strong and fight for the right things as a warrior, but you also have to be soft and tender like a lover.
Exactly.
And specifically what we had mentioned earlier, not just the lover as in like, oh, I love my wife, I love my kids, I love my friends, but first and foremost, if God is love, right? He should be our first and primary focus. And it is so hard, going back to what we were talking about earlier, to rearrange my life to put God at the top. You're telling me put God at the top of my number one list, even before my wife, my kids, my
career,
my business, my house. Like, what?
Absolutely.
And I still battle with that, for real. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I know I'm supposed to make him first, but do I make him first?
How do I go about making him first when I have all this stuff I need to do?
I know, but I need to
Yeah.
get bills paid,
Yeah,
God.
exactly.
Like, what you mean?
If
You
I
gotta
don't go to
first.
work, we're going to be homeless.
We
You don't
gonna
want to
be
see me homeless, do you? You
Because
know?
Brian's really gonna judge me. If I wear the same clothes 2 days in a row, Brian's not gonna judge. He's gonna judge me.
It's gonna say,
He's gonna say, "Oh, I'm gonna lose a friend, God. Do you want that? Do you want that?
can you imagine?
Exactly.
Trying to guilt God into giving you something. Can you imagine?
Man.
That's hilarious. But
Man.
that's a reality. Like, we struggle, and that's why, like, the lover, right? And again, the first thing we think of is like our relationship with our wives and our kids. But we're talking about lovers specifically, keeping the first things first.
Yeah.
And what is the first thing? Who is the first thing? And that's God.
Yes, the first love
First love.
should be God.
Absolutely.
And that's such a challenge for men today to keep God first.
Yeah. Especially when going back to love, because if you look up what love is now, you're going to be lost. You're
You're gonna see a rainbow.
Yeah.
You're gonna, yeah.
No,
Yeah,
for real,
that too.
right?
No, yeah, you're right.
Right?
You're
And it's not
right.
even the
Yeah.
real rainbow either. Like, it's like,
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
missing. It's missing.
Yeah,
a
it's
shade.
missing
Yeah,
one. Instead of
exactly.
7 colors, it's 6, which
Yeah.
is ironic. Anyways, we'll dive into that later.
I love how you switch
yeah.
it to your radio voice to say so to make a point. Like,
Yeah.
Ironic.
yeah. But geez, love, right? So the only true love that we have, like you said, is God, is Jesus, and there's so many examples of what love is, and sometimes it's not pleasant. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's saying a hard truth.
is that what they call tough love?
Tough love, man.
Perhaps.
Love is displayed in all different ways, man.
Yeah. But and that love goes into the warrior,
Yeah.
because when you stand up for what's right, you do it out of love. You don't do it out of anger.
Ooh.
Absolutely.
And that's such a great image. I don't mean to cut you off because it's not you're either warrior or either lover. You're both.
Yeah.
And they supplement and they complement each other so well. Because again, if you're only warrior and you go to that extreme,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah, exactly.
or I'm weak.
Yeah.
But when you love God first and you're following His leading,
Yeah.
His calling,
Yeah.
it makes the warrior so much easier because now I'm like, oh, okay. So I got to fight for the things that you care about,
Yeah.
the things that you put me on here to do.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you're right.
I just like boom. That's
Perfect.
such a good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude,
but it's
that was
not even
great.
really me fighting. This is you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh,
There you go.
Oh man,
Yeah,
dude.
telling
Okay,
you.
I wrote this down in the same note, and when you said that, the more alone you are, the more likely God can come in and save the day.
Yeah.
Filthy.
Yeah, because I feel like I'll do what I can and I'll reach that limit, but that's my limit.
Yeah.
And then from there, that's God.
Yeah.
There you go.
You know what I mean?
You can only do so much.
You
And you got to
only-
release.
You've got right.
You got to give it. You got to give it back to who created it.
And then you start
Yeah.
to see like, oh my gosh, I won that war even with only a couple guys.
Yeah.
That was not me.
Exactly.
I mean, that was only an extent, a
Yeah.
little bit piece.
Exactly.
But then that's when you really get to live life and like, wow, God is doing something amazing here because
Yeah.
to think about where you started and where you could go on your own, and then to see where God actually took you, to be in the hospital bed cursing God like, God, what the F? Why would you do this? And then to be here in this room, in this beautiful place, recording on good equipment, sitting to two men that I admire and truly love. I'm like, that's all right. That's a cool story. I don't think I could have written that one myself.
Nah.
All right, God, I like what you did there.
I see
Yeah.
you. I see you.
I see
Exactly.
you, you know?
Exactly.
And you always see his hand in your life after the fact. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yes.
Like you see it in hindsight.
Yeah.
You know, you see it when you look back and you're like, oh, that's what you wanted. That's what
Yeah.
you meant.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, that's where you were taking me.
Yeah.
That's why that happened.
Yeah.
You know? And that's
Man.
that's something that is so amazing about faith, you know,
Yeah.
because in those low moments is when you really need to understand that you need to be courageous, that you need to be confident, that you need to be that your trust needs to be in something stronger than yourself. You know, because there's
filthy.
someone leading you. There's someone taking you by the hand. You know, you don't know where you're going right now, but don't worry about that. Just do as he says. Everything will go according to plan.
That is filthy. You know, so I've been waiting for 10 years for this to happen, and it still hasn't happened.
Yep.
Why? And then, you know, year 11, it happens. Oh,
Oh,
There you
that's
go.
why.
that's why.
Yeah.
I needed to go through years
yeah.
6 and 7 to get
Yeah.
that trait, to get that
Exactly.
skill.
That's
yeah,
right.
exactly.
That's
I
right.
needed to
That
build my character.
experience.
Yeah, to be able to, you know, encounter the things that I was going to encounter in that meeting. I wouldn't have known how to talk to them if I would have started year 1. Like, yeah, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to this. Your character and your calling are so connected.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man, everything is just piecing together in my mind right now. Ever since that text that I sent you guys the other day with like character and calling and like, what if God actually gave you what you're asking for right now? Could you handle it? What would you do with it?
Yeah.
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 Well, look at all these people that win the lottery. You know,
Like the curse that they call it, the curse of the
curse,
lottery.
right.
They call it the curse of the lottery for a reason.
Yeah.
A lot of those people end up either just on the streets at some point or dead.
Yeah,
One of the two.
it's crazy.
Very often, not always, but very often.
Yeah. It's because, like, their character wasn't ready for that huge surge of money. And we've talked about it before. We've at least mentioned it. Money is just an amplifier.
It's a tool.
It's a tool, but it just amplifies the person you already are. Money doesn't change you. Money just makes you more of what and who you are. If you're a piece of crap, you're gonna and you get some money, you're gonna be a rich piece of crap.
Yeah.
A shiny
If you're-
piece of crap.
Yeah, yeah. You may not stink as much, but you're still a piece of crap. You know, but and the same thing. If you're a good person and you become rich, you're gonna be a good steward of that. But money is just an amplifier.
Yeah.
So it's like when you get these people who win the lottery and they, you know, it's awesome, it's a great thing, but their character wasn't able to withhold all of that. They weren't ready to. It's one thing to become the champion, it's another to stay the champion, right? Like getting it one time is one thing, but staying there is a completely different ballgame.
Absolutely.
So these people that become overnight millionaires, they are now, their bank account says you're a millionaire, but your mindset, your actions, your habits, and your identity is still broke.
Exactly.
Broken.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hello?
you broken. You broke and you broken.
Yeah. No.
But that's the reality.
Yeah.
Like and I ask God that, you know, like I want to be worthy of the calling He's given me. Whatever that looks like, if it's this podcast, if it's whatever projects He puts me into, whatever He blesses me to be a part of. I just pray that I am able to perform as the tool that He called me to be. He wants me to be a hammer, then I got to be solid. I got to be able to hammer in those nails. You cannot be a brittle hammer because when you hit something, you are going to crack.
That's right.
So you got to let your character align with your calling. And same thing, your alignments will determine your assignments.
That's right.
Preach on them, baby. Preach on them. Preach on them.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I couldn't said it better.
Man. So I would be curious, like what the audience will go about pointing out as, you know, the strengths for the people in this podcast, man. In all honesty.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's actually a really good one.
You know.
I'd actually like to hear
Popularity contest.
vote for me 31231 like American Idol. But that's actually a really a good piece. Like I don't know, did I send you guys? I know I sent it to you. Did I send you the that survey or spiritual gifts and stuff?
No, I don't think so.
I gotta send that to you. I would retake it again because I retook it a couple times just to make sure I'm not like just
Yeah.
it was just a one-off thing.
Hey, exactly.
But I wanted
Janitor.
God, that wasn't even an option. How do I get janitor?
For Jesus.
For Jesus. I'm like, God, really, janitor? He's like, I'm like, okay, you're right.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Did I stutter?
Did I stutter, boy?
Telling you.
Where's the mop?
Telling you, man.
But that's such a good point. I know it's like it's funny that we're laughing at it, but like, dude, are you humble enough to accept the calling that God's going to put you to?
Yeah.
Will you be able to accept it? If He called you to do X, Y, Z, and it's out of your comfort zone, why are you going to do it?
Exactly.
Or
That's
if it's
hard.
not as glamorous as you thought it'd be.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
I think that's for me one of the things that like really like was hard because I, especially like in the entrepreneurship world, it's a lot of like very ego, very like success oriented. And if your next calling, if for me, if my next calling wasn't going to be up to par, if not better, I'm like, are you sure, God?
Yeah.
I could do really good in that area. Are you sure
Exactly.
you want me to do that?
Yeah.
And that was a really humbling part in my life, and I think I just got so tired of like messing up life,
Yeah.
and I just had to surrender.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Like
man.
I'm just like I'm tired of doing it my way because I keep messing it up. I just end up more unhappy,
Yeah.
and it's just like you take all the other options away, and the only thing really left is like, all right, God,
Yeah.
what do you want? Like,
Exactly.
I'm so
Yeah.
tired of messing this up.
You have to be humble enough to let that go.
because sometimes you need to be broken.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes you need to be humbled.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And God
Yeah.
will do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially if He has a calling in your life and you're not getting it, He'll humble you.
Let me ask you guys, what's your story of like the time God really humbled you? I shared a little bit earlier with my injury at the PD. What do you guys think like that turning point it was for you that you, all right, God, what do you want? What was that?
Dude, I think I'm still going through it, man. To be
Oh.
honest with you, because for me, like school, I love going to school, right? But I hate taking tests.
That
So
sucks. I love school.
Yeah.
I was like, you can't have both.
Yeah, exactly. You
gotta
can't
take
have
one,
one
you
without
gotta-
the other. Yeah, exactly. So it's so tough for me, man, because I'll know what they're talking about, but then as soon as I read the wording on the test, like, nope. I don't know
I'm done.
anything.
I'm
Yeah,
done.
exactly.
I'm dropping this class.
Exactly.
Been getting straight A's this entire time. I'm dropping this class.
Yeah, so I guess I'm a self-defeatist in that manner. But while I go into a test and all these other people are behind me and, they're showing all this worry on their face, like, you got it. It's like, man, I don't know if I'm going to pass this test or not. Yeah, I'm telling everybody else, yeah, you're good. You'll be good. And then I come out, I usually do decent, I'm a B student. Yeah, but yeah, but I'm still struggling with that, man. Because at times I think that I'm moving toward my calling, but then just because I'm meeting so much resistance and such, I think it kind of goes to what we were talking about earlier. That resistance is for a reason, right? And whether or not I plan to, or I stay and play, or I turn and go, is really just something mental for me. And then, so trying to overcome that obstacle, definitely.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So, I guess I get my humbled story is the story of when I finally gave up and surrendered, like you were talking about earlier. My father had recently passed away. He passed away when I was 17, and then we ended up moving back to Texas, and I was just miserable, man. Like I hated my life, and it.
How old were you?
At the time, I think I was 18. Yeah, I was 18, maybe 19. But I hated my life, man. And I didn't have a bad life. It was just nothing really going on, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. Like,
I got
it's
you.
not like I was in some...
Like you weren't fulfilled almost.
Yes, I
Yeah.
wasn't fulfilled. That's a good
Kinda
way
go
to
through the
say
motions
it.
feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I had friends, but, you're with them and you're just like, man, I'm bored.
Yeah.
Like,
We do the
boring.
same thing
I'm
every day.
boring. Like
Yeah.
we're just two boring
Yeah,
people, man.
exactly.
We just
Why
come
do we
sit
hang
down
out?
and be and we're just being boring together. Not all of them, but some of them.
Yeah.
And then I I don't know. It was at the time, Denton was a small university town, college town, whatever. And so it wasn't much to do, you know what I mean? And so anyways, one night I was just defeated feeling, you know what I mean? And I was in my car, it was a 91 Honda Accord junker. And I blew up the
Classic.
motor in it 3 times. I had to replace that. It was ridiculous. And everything else at that. By the end of me having that car, it was 100% like lifetime warranty, everything from O'Reilly's. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Everything, the mounts, the alternator, the brakes, everything, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, and I used to take car rides at night just because I couldn't sleep. I'm bored. What am I going to do? Just lay here in bed, stare up at the ceiling? It's ugly. Ew. Leave it. And so go on the car ride, get to the park, and I'm just staring out the window and I'm looking at the stars, which you can actually see from in Denton in certain parts. And I'm just like,
This is it.
all right, God.
Yeah.
I keep hearing about you. I kind of know you. I know of you, definitely. But I'm tired, and nothing I do is going right. And I'm going to let you have control. I'm giving you my life. Just take it and do whatever you want with it. I said these words to God. Take my life and
You
do
said it out
whatever.
loud?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
As I'm looking up at the stars, take my life and do whatever you want with it. I'm going to start going to church, and you talk to me if you want, and make me feel some things if you want, and we'll see what happens. And that's exactly what happened. I started going to church, and there was always this little flame in me, for God, I have to say. There was a seed that was planted there by my parents. My mom really spoke word into me, as I said on this podcast before. So again, I've heard of God, and I've heard of his glories, and I've heard of his amazing majesty, and his consuming fire and his anger and all that. And I'm like, how do you have all this in one God, right? But I started to experience that for myself, and I felt that little ember just grow into a flame, and depending on how much you feed it, it gets bigger, it gets smaller, what I mean? Because that's the nature of fire, you know what I mean? And the Holy Spirit really works in us like that. When we try to commune with God, when we invite the Holy Spirit in our lives, to show us his glory, to show us his miracles, to lead us to wherever it is that he wants us in life, there has to be a change, an honest, an earnest, humbled change,
That is filthy.
Like you said earlier that, you read the Bible just to read, or not the Bible, but books just to read it. But with the Bible, you actually try and you stop. You try to digest it. You try to understand it. You try to memorize some of it, so it'll take. There's a lot of people that will read the Bible to try and disprove it. There's a lot of people that will read the Bible just for points to argue with someone. They'll read the Bible as an atheist or whatever from a prideful standpoint instead of a humbled standpoint and see, okay, maybe, probably not, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll learn something. Maybe I won't. We'll see. Well, let's just sit down and what's the worst that could happen, But anyways, that's probably my humbled story. That's my coming to Jesus story.
Yeah, man.